Okay, hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm here with an extra upload today because I am very aware that it is A-level season, it's GCSE season. Basically, it's the worst time of the year. Exams are coming up in like 2 months time, I think. Yeah, obviously I sat my A-levels last year and I am pretty experienced in giving A-level advice given that I've been through them, and I thought I would chat through my English literature A-level like tips and tricks, because basically I get a lot of questions in my DMs about revision and what I did to achieve my grade that I got. So if you guys don't know, I actually got an A* in English literature. It was my only A* at A-level, but like I'm very proud of it, not gonna lie. And I did work super hard, so I kind of thought that maybe sharing some tips and tricks on how I actually managed to get full marks in some of the exam questions might be helpful for you guys sitting it this year. I am not usually like a study tuber. I don't often upload like specific revision videos. This is kind of like just for those of you that are sitting this, and if it helps somebody then that's great. So yeah, for content that is a bit more like this all the time, there are loads of my friends that you guys should check out and subscribe to. Eve Bennett, Unjaded Jade, Jack Edwards, to name a few, but there are loads of really helpful channels and I am not usually one of them, but I'm gonna do this video today anyway because I feel like, why not? So to give you a little bit of background, I did English at GCSE, obviously like the rest of the country, and I got an A* in my English lit and my English language at GCSE, and I took it at A-level because it was always like my strong subject. I'm not gonna lie, I was very average at a lot of other subjects. In fact, most of the subjects I was very mediocre, just like whatever, and I worked really hard at GCSE to make sure that I got like a little bit above average, but generally I'm not the brightest tool, you know, like come on. English was always like the one that I could kind of do, so I chose to take it at A-level, and I think I have an AS and an A-level in it, but I'm actually not sure. I can't remember if I sat it as two separate exams. I think I just have an A-level actually, maybe. Who even knows? I don't even know what qualifications I've got. Basically, yeah, so I sat it on the AQA exam board, and this is going to be kind of tailored towards how I achieved that grade on AQA, but generally it is just like an advice video and it doesn't really matter what exam board you're sitting it on to watch this. But I sat it on AQA and I studied the books. This is going to test my memory. The tragedy paper, and I did the political and social protest writing, which wasn't a fun time but weirdly ended up being my stronger side. Like I thought I was better at the tragedy paper. Clearly I wasn't, but hey. So I studied Othello, which is obviously by Shakespeare. I did Death of a Salesman by Arthur Miller, and I did poetry by John Keats, and was there another? No, that was it for the tragedy paper. And then for the political and social protest writing paper, I studied The Kite Runner by Khalid Hosseini, poetry by Tony Harrison, and I did Hard Times by Charles Dickens, which, may I just add, is a vile book. Yeah, and then for my coursework I did Virginia Woolf. Lord knows why I picked Virginia Woolf. That just made it really difficult for myself. And I also did poetry by, what is his name? Oh my god. But I'm not actually too sure if you guys do coursework now in the A-levels, so I'm not going to talk too much about that. However, I do think that it was probably my coursework that pulled my grade up to an A*, because overall my exams for me go a little bit worse than if I've got like time to redraft it. Obviously it kind of works that way for everyone, but I got 24 out of 25 on my coursework, so that was like super strong. But I'm not going to talk about that too much because I don't think it's relevant. So I asked you guys on Instagram for any questions that you might have and anything that you want me to answer. Obviously it's a bit of a niche subject, so I get that not a lot of people are asking questions. So the first thing I actually did when I started year 13 was buy a set of notebooks. I think I've shown these in my videos before, but these were from Muji. They were like £6 for 5 or something like that, and I just wrote the title of the book on the front and had all of my revision very separate, because obviously studying so many texts means that you've got a lot of notes, you've got a lot of revision, and I find it easier just to like differentiate. So I would use these for like all sorts of things, but mainly making like mind maps during the lesson, just taking notes, like because obviously at A-level you don't have like a book as such for your subject, so I just like bought my own exercise books, and I would just use these to take like colour coordinated notes. And if I'm honest, I really miss doing stuff like this. Like I should have just done an English degree, but yeah. So that is how I would use these. These are generally just based around either essay plans, so like this is an essay plan and this is an essay plan, but also around like themes. So in each text there were key themes. Obviously I was studying them under the bracket of either like political writing or tragedy, and they were generally all based around themes. So for example, this is The Kite Runner. So the themes I've got going on in here, I've got stuff like education, the American dream, protest, the passing of time, memory in the past, nostalgia, society, redemption, and I've just like separated each one up into themes. I find this really helpful. Mind map making is what I actually used to do a lot. Like it's a common occurrence in these books. Like actually I think for Shakespeare I just did a lot of essay plans, but like I did a lot of spider diagrams. I find these kind of things helpful just because then you can like methodically work around it. I'm quite a methodic worker. Oh, love that. That's not even English. Also did this for my media A-level. But yeah, so this was like my main port of call. We obviously had a lot of like help, a lot of handout sheets, a lot of really helpful lessons that I can't just like recite to you, but my teachers for both papers were like incredible. So obviously it does depend on your teaching as well, but generally like obviously you get the A-level yourself, you sit the paper yourself, but my teachers were really good, so that was helpful. But yeah, that was like my main method of revision. I also had these books. Personally, I don't find these massively helpful, but these are the York Notes A-level on Othello and on The Kite Runner. But then because I studied quite niche texts, like Hard Times by Charles Dickens isn't popular to study, neither is Death of a Salesman. Actually, Death of a Salesman is quite popular, but like I didn't do other stuff, like I didn't do Macbeth, I didn't do Gatsby, like the popular literature text. Did do Gatsby in year 12 though. So yeah, I had these. They were kind of helpful for general themes and general like just going over the text, but I'm not sure it was worth £8, but yeah. So that was kind of like my main way of revising. And then obviously I did a lot of essay plans. Now I actually got a lot of questions on Instagram about how I structured an essay. I'm gonna link one of my essays that got like good marks down below if I can find them. I'm hoping past Molly saved them on Google Drive, so I'll link one down below. Not so that you can like read it, just so you can look at how I structured it, because obviously talking through an actual essay structure is probably not going to be that helpful right now, but I would always structure them the same, and that was generally like introduction. Imagine taking an English A-level and not being able to talk. Introduction, and then like 3 paragraphs, and then a conclusion, and in the paragraphs I would just literally go back to what I learned at GCSE, where it was like point, evidence, explanation, or whatever it was, but obviously in like more depth and like rooted in the text, and a lot of quotes basically. A lot of my questions were about how I learned quotes. Now I had one paper was an open book exam and one paper was a closed book exam, but I think they've actually got rid of that now. Personally, I find closed book exams so much easier anyway. Like I just think that if you don't have to pick the book up and faff around looking through it, you've got more time. Yeah, this isn't sponsored, but I used Quizlet. Like that is literally what I did. I would just go over them. If I was really struggling, I would write it out and write it out and write it out, but generally I've got quite a good memory, so it wasn't a massive problem. Like it wasn't really the quotes that I struggled with, it was more like the content of the essay and what to include, because a problem that occurred for me a lot throughout year 13 was I wasn't writing enough. Like I needed to write longer essays, and I think in the exam obviously you're massively under time pressure, but for like coursework and just for practice essays I would never write enough, and that was something I actually had to work on a lot. Every time I handed an essay and my teacher was like, this is really good but it's not long enough, and I was like, I don't know what else to say. So yeah, content and learning content that fitted with the right question was difficult, but I think that was helped actually by making mind maps and themes, and also, to be fair, these books. But yeah, so quotes I learned on Quizlet mainly. A lot of people were asking about context. Now obviously this depends on what you're studying. For me obviously it's easy to research context when the themes are so broad. So for me, context around the tragedy paper was obviously like Shakespearean tragedy, Aristotle, that kind of vibe. And again, I found that the most interesting part. I think because I'm really interested in like history as well, that was the best bit for me. I loved the context. I loved, especially when I was doing Gatsby, which I didn't take to A-level, but when I did Gatsby at AF, the context was the best bit. Like I love the American Dream and America in the 20s and that kind of stuff. I personally found the best to revise because it was kind of fun, but obviously that depends on what you like. But yeah, I think reading around the text and the context can be really hard to like implement into an essay because you don't need a lot of it, and I think that's a common misconception, is that you need to like write loads about what was going on at the time when it was written, and you actually don't really need that. You only need a basic understanding. So I would say don't focus too much on the context. Obviously know it, but there's other more important things like your style of writing, how focused it is on the question, that is so important, and just like how you round it off as well. Like all of my essays, something I focused on a lot was kind of learning how to bring it back to the question at the end of every paragraph and just rooting it in the question so that I wasn't going off on one, because I have a tendency to ramble, as you can probably tell by the length that this video is going to be. So that was something that I like honed in a bit in year 13. So a lot of you are asking about revising poetry. I'm probably kind of strange, but poetry is actually like my favourite thing. I like novels and I like poetry. I'm not a massive fan of plays. I don't really like studying plays, sort of Shakespeare. Poems were my favourite thing. I did Keats' poetry and I did Harrison's poetry, and I really like both poets. So super different, like a million miles away from each other, but they were probably the easiest to study because I think that it's like telling a story story but really short, great. But for revision, again, I think that learning the quotes, putting them into Quizlet, and just it's kind of the same like revising a poem as it is to revising a novel. Like, just root it in the question, and the essays are similar, like it's very similar. Unseen, this was something I hated. I absolutely hated the unseen section of the exam, because I just think, what's the point in studying all these texts for so long to perhaps be completely like derailed by something you've never seen before? I don't know, I didn't like it. However, I actually did quite well on that question. Revision for it, I think, is just like revise the paper. So obviously mine was political and social protest, I think my unseen was. So I revised a lot about like political writing, key themes in political writing, because it's very similar to whatever you've studied, and then just apply the knowledge that you've got from your other text to that question and make it work. Like, that was kind of what I did. Obviously there is a chance that you could maybe guess what the unseen is going to be. Like, for us, there is not that many texts that fall under political and social protest writing at all. In fact, it's quite a niche genre, so it meant that unless they were going to give us a poem, it was always going to be kind of along the same lines. So when we sat our mocks, we guessed what it was going to be before we sat the paper. Like, our first unseen was on Fahrenheit 451, which is by Ray Bradbury, and we kind of knew that it was going to be that because there aren't that many texts. So you could try and work from one that you think it might be or might be similar to, but again, obviously, like, don't rely on that, but you could do that just as a practice essay, and that was obviously like quite helpful. Okay, so a bit more generally about revision, I think that I probably focused on my English because I was like, I wanted an A star. Like, I had 2 A stars from GCSE, and I was aiming for an A, like, because at A-level, like, that was just kind of where I was aiming, but in my heart, I wanted an A star, but I didn't think it was like possible. So I revised on English a lot, like more than my other subjects, which is obviously reflected in the grade. But I would say I probably did like maybe 4 hours a week outside of school, which actually is not a lot. And then obviously I had 4 hours in school, so about 8 hours a week up until probably Easter, and then I would do like 6 or 7 hours a day on some days, but obviously that was divided between one other A-level because I sat photography earlier. I was quite fortunate in the sense that when it came to exams, I only had 2 in like exam period, so that obviously was helpful. But generally I would say probably 4 hours a week until Easter was what I did. But again, everybody's different. A lot of people are saying, how did you remember key themes? So again, mind maps. I just put everything into mind maps. I stuck them on the wall. Like, I used to revise in my dining room, so I'd sit downstairs in my house and I'd just put them on the wall and either rewrite it out whilst looking at it or just sit and like read it, which sounds ridiculous, but I find that like reading it out loud, almost like speaking it into existence, really helps. How did you find the motivation to reread the books? Because that is just not happening. Honestly, a mood. I'm gonna be really honest. There were 2 books. No, I read every single book twice, apart from Hard Times, which I don't even think I read once. Like, I didn't even read that from cover to cover because I just cannot. It's a really easy book to grasp as well, so you don't really need to like read every single word. Dickens liked to elongate what he's actually trying to say, so the book was probably about 4 times the length it needed to be. So I kind of just skim read that one. Don't recommend it, but I did read all of the other texts like twice or 3 times. Personally, for me, that wasn't massively a problem. I like reading and I didn't hate the book, so I just kind of like forced myself to do it. If you don't want to reread them, see if there's something you can watch. I know that is cheating, but like, to be honest, Death of a Salesman and Othello were written as like stage productions, so I think that watching that is actually really helpful, and it's not cheating, it's just a little bit easier. Okay, the last question I'm going to answer is, what resources did you use that you found helpful? So, a really good question. There was a few websites. Quizlet was my main one, to be honest, because I found Quizlet really helpful in terms of me making my own flashcards, but also like pre-made ones. Other things like Shakespeare Navigator, actually I can't remember what that is, but I remember the name of the website, but I did use that either for just reading the text online or translating Shakespearean words that I didn't know what they meant. And then honestly, just past papers and past essays, it's really difficult. I really appreciate that if you're sitting exams, GCSE or A-level now, there isn't much to go on in the past. Like, I think I was the 2nd year to sit this exam, so there was really not that much, but past papers, anything that you can get from your school resource wise, like past exam questions, that's really helpful, because obviously AQA don't really give you them until after the exams because there's so little availability that they don't give out the years before until May. So yeah, just whatever your school could give out, but also yeah, Quizlet was amazing. Not sponsored by Quizlet, but. And then a lot, in fact the majority of the other ones was just like, did you enjoy it? Do you regret taking it? I'm unsure about whether to take it at A-level. So generally, obviously I can't really answer for you if you're thinking of taking it at A-level or at a degree level from A-levels. Personally, I loved it. English was my favourite A-level. I really enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it all the way through school, and it was a lot of work. It is difficult, but I think if you enjoy reading and you like writing essays, then like do it, because I think it's really rewarding rewarding. I think it really helps you kind of know about the world you're living in as well, which is great. Okay, my camera just died, so I'm just gonna finish this here. But yeah, basically I'm gonna pop on screen the breakdown of the actual like raw scores that I got, not the UCAS points, not any of that, like literally just out of 25 what I got. I'm gonna put them on the screen because this is just to show you that you actually don't need to get full marks in every single essay to get an A star. In fact, I actually did quite badly in like 2 of my essays. Not badly, but like not what you would associate with being an A star. So yeah, this was my breakdown, and basically I think I was like pretty solidly into an A star with those scores. So yeah, I thought I'd just add that on at the end so that you guys can see that it is definitely achievable and realistic if you put your mind to it. So I hope you guys have found this helpful. If you're sitting in an English exam and you have any other questions, let me know down in the comments. Also, let me know what books you're studying because I find it really interesting and I low-key really miss it. So yeah, I hope you have found this helpful. Subscribe if you're new to my channel and you've never seen my face before, because that would be super helpful, and I'm going to be doing a couple of other like exam university style videos. So let me know what you want if you've got any other requests down in the comments, and I shall see you on Saturday with a weekly vlog. Bye!